Okay, so let's just start at the very beginning of your experience playing volleyball. How did you start?
Yes.
Um, what age were you, and did you always think that you were going D2, D3?
Yeah. So I started playing volleyball in about first or second grade, probably. And I got introduced to it by my mom, and she just put me in this like little rec league, and like she was my coach. And so I knew from a young age that I wanted to like be a year-round athlete. So then I kind of moved into like club sports, and then it was like I thought I wanted to play basketball in college. And so I was like set on playing basketball in college. And I played all throughout high school, played volleyball all throughout high school, and then finally just had to like pick one or the other, and I chose volleyball. So that's kind of how I went between those two sports. And then in regards to like D2, D3, I didn't know that I was gonna go D2, D3. I didn't like want to necessarily. It was never like, oh, I want to go D3. You know what I'm saying? Um, but I grew up in Waco, and so we have Baylor here. And so I wanted to play basketball at Baylor for my entire life, and then I wanted to play volleyball. And I just realized like I started my recruiting process kind of late, and I knew that I wasn't going to go to some big school. So I was just like, LeTourneau was a good fit. So,
So you moved 3 hours away,
uh
but
huh.
you were still well within the state of Texas.
Yes.
How was that move?
Yeah. So I'm a big family person. And so the move was tough, even though it's only 3 hours. And like I even have family 30 minutes away from where I go to college. Um, but it was still like so hard. I was home all the time. Um, the I guess just a lot happened my freshman year. And I just like kind of needed everything seemed really chaotic, and I needed some sort of stability. And I feel like the stability that I needed was like home. And so I was home all the time. So, but I feel like now I'm kind of learning to break away a little bit. So,
Was there
yes.
ever a conversation, either within your own mind or with some of your coaches or parents, that you should move back to Waco to a surrounding D2, D3 school?
Yeah. So, there was that talk, and there still is that talk. Um, we're giving another year to the school that I'm at right now. Um, and just it's not even like the people that are there or the coaches. It's just like what's best for me. You know what I'm saying? And so we just went through a lot of changes like in our athletic program and situationally. And so we're gonna give it like another year or so and then reevaluate, see from there. Because I think my freshman year was just like a lot of extremes happening all at once. And it wasn't a very realistic representation of like what college and college athletics are supposed to be like. So, yeah.
So your school has only been D3 since 2018. That's what I
That's a fact
found.
I probably didn't know.
That's
Completely
what
off
I
guard.
found just doing
Huh.
kind of a prelim search of where you go to school. And
Yeah.
I normally it's funny because most of the athletes that I have on this podcast come from
Uh-huh.
schools that are well renowned and have lots
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
recruiting money and
Uh-huh.
championships and
Yeah.
like highlights from years and years
Uh-huh.
past. What
Yeah.
was it that brought you to a school that didn't really have a ton of experience?
Yeah. So the D3 thing, I've heard a lot of different things. So like I've heard the 2018, but I've also heard that like we went D3 in like the 80s or so, something like that. My like
They've waxed
kinesiology professor
away.
said that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We were in AIA for a while, and then we moved up, and then we probably moved back, move up again. I'm not 100% sure. Um, but yeah, so what kind of brought me to LeTourneau? So I started my recruiting process late, like I said, or not late, but like late for going Division 1. And I had heard of LeTourneau through my high school volleyball coach because she went, that was her alma mater, and that's where she went. So I was just like, huh, why not just add him to my email list? I feel like I've emailed the entire like college every single college in the United States at this point. So I'm like, maybe they'll give me a chance. So yeah, the coach reached back out to me and was like, we want to have you on a visit. And I was like, cool, this is looking good. So yes.
What are the schools were on that radar?
So I had 3 offers, and I was okay. So my recruiting happened during COVID, so 2020. And so that was kind of like a curse for like every other athlete, but for me, because I was kind of like not playing at the biggest club and not on the top team all the time. It was kind of like a blessing because all coaches could do is just sit at their computer and recruit kids. And so I was just sending emails to like Clemson, TCU, like big schools, you name it, Stanford. And I would like get emails back, but I mean, they were like, oh, sorry, we're already recruited. Um, so yeah, that happened. And I'm sorry, I totally forgot your question. I was like going on a tangent.
Essentially, what was the pool of a D3 school?
The pool of D3 schools. Yes. It was, I had Hendrix College, which was really, really interested in me. And then I also had Otterbein University, and they're somewhere up north. I think they're in Ohio, I want to say. And so they couldn't officially offer me because I never made it to campus. And that was because of COVID. So they weren't allowed to have people on campus. So they were 2 other schools that like had said they were going to offer me if I had made it onto campus, but I never did. So they never technically gave me an offer. So yes.
And then when you got to campus, did you feel at home? And what kind of environment were you now in?
Yeah, so I did feel at home. I think that was like technically my first college like recruitment visit. And so I think the at home feeling that I thought that I felt was more like excitement almost. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, like my dreams are coming true. I've always wanted this to happen. Um, and so I think I kind of did feel at home, but I don't know if it was like the right feeling. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I would kind of say that. I think it was a lot of like excitement, nervousness, and also just like ready to commit. I was like, I'm ready to be a college athlete.
And then what were the resources that you were walking into? I mean, what kind of resources physically, mentally, emotionally did your college give you? Just kind of off.
Yeah. Um, so our in regards to like facilities, they're not the nicest. So like physically, I mean, we're D3. We don't have like a ton of athletic money. And my school's an engineering school. So a lot of it goes towards aviation and engineering. But in regards to facilities, our athletic facilities are not like top notch. They're just like kind of doing the most with what they can or with what they have. In regards to like my coaches and stuff, I would say they wanted to help as much as they could, but I never really opened up to them or got super close to them just because one, I didn't know how to talk about the things that I was feeling. And two, it almost felt like they were like closed off and kind of didn't want to have to deal with it a little bit. And so I don't think that that was their intention, but that's like how it kind of came off, especially to like a younger, like new college student. So, I mean, I think it was just lack of communication. And so I feel like that was a lack of resource right there, especially a direct resource with like someone who I was with all the time. And then my second semester, I started counseling. And so that was like super easy. I just like sent an email to the counseling director and he put me in touch with a counselor. And I had about 6 or 7 weeks of counseling, like right up until the end of the year. So, and that was like awesome. It was so good. I just felt like a breath of fresh air every time that I went. So, yes.
What kind of things were you talking about in those counseling sessions? Was it more clinical? I mean, you don't have to tell me exactly what you talked about, but was it more clinical or performance based?
I would say a little bit of both. I mean, I'm pretty open about this, so it's not that big of a deal. I don't have much to hide, but I just think, or I talked about like I was injured pretty much my entire freshman season, and I talked about performance anxiety a little bit, and how like I literally experienced performance anxiety while I was injured and I wasn't even performing. Like I just think that's ridiculous, and that shouldn't even be a topic of like discussion for an injured athlete is performance anxiety. But like I definitely struggled with that. I was like, I don't even know. It was weird. It was just a lot of pressure, even for someone who's like just sitting on the bench in a boot. I'm like, that's ridiculous. The pressure that's put on to like developing kids. And then I also talked about, um, she told me that I could potentially, I mean, she was like a grad student, so she couldn't technically like diagnose me, you know what I'm saying? Um, but she was telling me that there's a chance that I could have like situational depression and anxiety just from like everything that I had experienced my freshman year and everything like with the volleyball team and the environment of that and just like socially all of the things that I had gone through. um, a lot of that could have just built up and you just, you know, stuff happens and you don't really know how to process it and you're by yourself and you don't have anyone to talk to. So yeah.
Can you detail me your injury history?
Uh-huh. So um I had like had previous injuries before, um in like high school and in club sports, like it was common. But I it was a funny story. So I got to school like having trained for this fitness test, and we got to the like conditioning part of it, which is like this ridiculous running that she made us do. Wasn't even good for my sport. It was like should have been in the basketball fitness test. It was stupid. But anyways, I had to redo that 4 times because I didn't make it, even though I had trained. It was just like anxiety. I felt like I was gonna like throw up every time I even looked at the volleyball court, just from like pressure and anxiety. And she had told me like, "You're not gonna play if you don't make this part of the fitness test." And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to make it. And so I ended up being diagnosed with a stress fracture in my right foot. And so I was booted for about 8-ish weeks, pretty much the entire season. So from like the second week after we started volleyball to like conference tournament is when I was injured. And so then I came home for Christmas break and my parents were like, this just doesn't seem right. Like, let's get a second opinion from like our orthopedic at home. And he looked at my x-rays and found out there was no fracture ever. There was never a fracture in my foot. He was like, did you get to look at your x-rays? And I was like, no. I mean, he like flicked them to me for a second, but I never like got to study them. And he was like, well, next time you need to ask for that, because he was like, you never had a fracture. And I was like, so why was my foot hurting? And why was it like burning? And he was like, well, you actually just had what's called a stress reaction, which is just right before your foot breaks. So like I mean, if you would have kept playing, there's a potential for you to break your foot, but your foot was never broken. So you didn't technically need the boot and you could have played the entire season. And I was like, good. That's really awesome. Thank you for doing that. It feels like a waste. But in all honesty, I feel like it wasn't really a waste because I feel like I kind of avoided a lot of like, I feel like my situational depression and anxiety could have been a lot worse if I would have played. Um, so I'm kind of glad that I was injured that freshman year. So it's kind of a blessing in disguise. So,
What do you think is the most difficult part about playing women's college athletics?
ooh, that's a good question. I would say in women's college athletics, I would say probably just dealing with team drama and also dealing with just like pressure from your coaches as well. Because I know from my team, there was a lot of like dysfunction a little bit, and it felt like it was split into like two different groups almost. And then our coach just kind of like said she was going to do something about it, but didn't really do anything. And it just felt so divided. And whenever we brought stuff like that up, it was never, it was like, okay, we'll do something about it. But it was never truly addressed. It was just like, okay, let's do team bonding. Well, that's not gonna fix anything. We need to like actually address the issue. And you need to listen to your players who are struggling. So I feel like those are some of the most difficult things. So
And
yeah.
then how do you, when you're sidelined the entire season as a
Yeah.
freshman, how do
Mhm.
you make a name for yourself? How do you make sure that
Mhm.
you switch into a different role?
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of knew going into it. I was like, I don't think that I'm going to get to play a lot. I was like, it's my freshman year. I'm not, I mean, she told me I was going to be a stud, but like that's probably just like for the recruitment, and it was. And yeah, I kind of had this mindset going into it like, okay, I'm just going to work hard. I'm going to learn, and I'm going to just take it all in, and hopefully playing would come along with that. Well, then I got hurt, and I was just like, okay, well, now all I can do is kind of just like watch and learn and just like be the best teammate that I can be, and be the best like encourager and build up my teammates and listen to them and just kind of be almost like a manager figure, which I think was a good thing for me because I've always been a player and I've always been like the captain in high school or whatever. So I feel like it was a good experience for me.
How did you go about changing your role while you were sidelined?
Um, I kind of went about it just like almost like I knew it was gonna happen a little bit. I don't know. I just like I feel like it didn't really phase me that much until a bunch of other things started happening. I was just like, okay, like this sucks. I just remember like sitting in my dorm and like feeling my foot, and I was like, okay, I know this is gonna be a stress fracture. I know what a stress fracture feels like. So I'm just kind of like waiting for the doctor to tell me that it's going to be a stress fracture. And I just kind of had already known what was going to happen almost. And so it wasn't hard to like switch roles because it was in like the first week of like being in college. So I like didn't even really have a role at the time. So I just kind of was like, okay, well, I'm that freshman that's injured in the boot that you're going to see on the sideline. So I just embrace it. So yeah.
And then you were kind of trying to deal with your on the court activities, and then your grades start to slip.
Uh-huh.
How are you managing that?
Yeah, so I've always been a good student. I like graduated high school with a 4.0. Um was like a very good student. I went to a really academically rigorous high school. Um and so I thought that I was going to be well prepared for college, and I I guess I just like started to experience like true burnout. And so I was just like exhausted all the time. I was tired. I had a difficult roommate situation, and that was pretty exhausting for me. Um, and I just like couldn't even keep up. I mean, I was doing my stuff, but I wasn't really doing it well. And so just not putting in a lot of effort, not putting a lot of effort into like studying for my tests. And so I was just like, I don't care. I'm just doing what I need to pass. And then second semester will come and I'll get back on track. And that also didn't happen. I started experiencing more burnout even after season. And so I'm like just taking the summer to rest and like do a few classes because like I'm trying to graduate early so I can just get out. But yeah, I just burnout was a big thing. And so I kind of dealt with it just like taking time for myself. I didn't really make a lot of friends my freshman year, if I'm being completely honest. And so I got a lot of time with myself. And so I would like do things like go get my nails done or go to Target, go shopping. or whatever, just to like take a breather. So those were kind of some of the things that I did.
Yeah. So was it just like a culmination of being an athlete and adjusting to college life that all just
Hmm.
kind of built up into this mindset that wasn't working for you?
Yes. So I think it was a lot of like, oh, we were with our team so much, so they were our only friends. Well, like I said before, like our team was so split, and I was a pretty like middle person almost, so I didn't really like fit with either group, I guess you could say. I mean, I guess that's how I found myself. That's how I felt. And so it was kind of hard to like develop deep friendships with people that I had known for like 4 months, you know? And so like I know friendships take time, but I just like I don't think that like those kind of friendships were what I was expecting. Like I feel like I was just expecting something like a friendship like high school where it's like you're with them for like 8 years and you're best friends and inseparable, but it definitely was not that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's weird. It's a kind of a weird situation to be in when you're with
Mhm.
these girls all the time and they're not your best friends.
Mhm. Yeah, it was really weird. It was definitely like something I kind of had to think about because like I didn't want to go into this. I didn't want to be someone that I wasn't. Like I know I'm really strong in who I am and I know who I am. I know my values. And so I didn't want to have to change those to make friends. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that like learning that lesson is like super lonely, but it's one of the most beneficial lessons that you can learn is like learning who you are and just learning how to navigate like what people are going to be good for you and they're going to help build you up versus who's going to like change you and try to make you do stuff that you don't necessarily want to do. So,
So how
yeah.
did that kind of epiphany work into some of the mental health stuff that you were going through during
Uh-huh.
the same time?
I don't think that that epiphany happened until after I got home from college for the summer. Um, so I don't think I really realized it when I was going through everything that I was going through, but like as I've kind of taken a step back and like reflected on my freshman year and written about it, then I've just kind of realized like I learned a lot from my freshman year. As much as it sucked and it was just absolutely horrible, I learned a lot. So, yeah.
So why start the blog?
Yeah, so I haven't written on it in a while because I've been absolutely busy and extremely burnt out. Um, but I've always been a pretty creative person, I think. And at my high school that I went to, we like all we did was write and read. And so I found myself like finding, I don't like academic writing or like scientific writing. I just like creative writing because I can write however I want. And so I was literally like taking a shower one day and I was like, I have a lot of things that I want to think about, that I want to talk about. And so I wrote like my first Instagram post. And then there was one night I like could not fall asleep because I was like just thinking about all of these things. And I was like, I have like paragraphs like written out in my head and I need to like share them with people. And so I wrote like my next two Instagram posts. And then I was like, well, I don't want to spam everyone all the time with these like 8 paragraph Instagram captions. So I was like, I'll put it in a blog where if you want to read it, you can. So I started the blog and I have like much more room to write and kind of expand on what I'm talking about. And so that's kind of why I started it just as like a outlet to kind of reflect and maybe share some thoughts that are um, relatable to other people. And from that has come 2 podcast interviews. So I'm like, cool. I didn't know my horrible freshman year would lead to people being interested in it. So yeah.
It's more about just your ability to articulate your thoughts in a way
Uh-huh.
that makes them relatable.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah, I agree.
when I saw your story, and then I went to your blog and I read your posts, I could
Mhm.
hear your voice in them. And I
Yeah.
think that's what people who are going to read your blog posts need.
Yes, I agree. And yeah, I kind of I didn't want to make it this like super high level reading. I was just like, no, this is gonna be me rambling on on my blog, and I'm not gonna use like correct grammar, and I'm not gonna like sugarcoat anything. I mean, I talked about like weight gain and binge eating and all of that stuff, and like no one talks about that unless they're like an influencer. You know what I'm saying? And so I was like, I'm not an influencer, but I am a college athlete and I know other college athletes deal with stuff like this all the time. So might as well talk about it because it's not something that needs to be shamed. So yeah.
Have you had any of your teammates read your blog posts and come back to you
hmm
and just open a dialogue about them?
Yes, I actually have. I've had a lot of them come back and be like, this is like super relatable, especially I think I talked about my last one was performance anxiety. Yes, because I remember writing that one. I talked about the performance anxiety and I like linked it on my Instagram, and I had like tons of athletes like respond and just say like, this was really relatable, this was really good, really well said, just all that stuff. And so I was like, oh, people are actually like liking this. That's cool. So yeah, I enjoy it. It's definitely an outlet for me and just a way to process and all of that stuff. So,
So
yeah.
what other topics are you planning on talking about? Are they all going to come from personal experience, or are you kind of trying to make this into a resource more broadly?
Yeah. I think they would all just kind of come from right now. I kind of just write as it comes. And currently I'm experiencing extreme burnout and I'm just exhausted. And so I haven't written in a while. I've also been like super, super busy. And so I just like haven't had time to write. But I have been like, as I've been home for a few weeks, about a month actually, and just like had some consistency and structure in my life. I've kind of started to like get my creative juices back, if you will. And I think I want to start writing a lot more just from like my personal experiences and what I've experienced in not even just college sports, just like as a 19-year-old girl. Like, what a weird age. Just so many things happening. You're like halfway to adulthood, but you're like still a teenager. You know, it's just kind of weird. Um, so just stuff like that. I just kind of want to write from personal experience and maybe someone will like it. So yeah.
When you see the dialogue shifting surrounding athlete mental health,
hmm
not only at the highest level with people like Kevin Love and Naomi Osaka, but also
Yeah.
people like you who have rather recreational blogs but are just trying to get the word out.
Yeah.
How do you see the dialogue coming from basically all directions helping
hmm
this cause?
Um, yeah, I think it's definitely moving in a more positive way, I would think. I feel like a lot of athletes are like coming out and sharing their struggles. And I feel like that's a really good thing that they're talking about it and people are listening and like empathizing with them and all of this stuff. I think what needs to change is the way that the resources for those athletes listen to them. So, like the coaches or the managers or however high up the athlete is, whether it's like NBA or like just NAIA, like the coaches have to listen or like someone has to listen to them and someone has to help them because like there have been too many athletes that have lost their lives because of mental health struggles. And so all of these athletes can talk about what they've been struggling and people can listen and stuff, but like nothing's going to change unless the people that are higher up, like coaches and stuff, actually do something about it. And so whether that's changing their coaching philosophy or whether it's changing their coaching methods, stuff like that has to change because there's a ridiculous amount of pressure on athletes of any age. Like, even my brother, who's like 12 years old, is like worried about college recruitment. Like, that's stupid. That's ridiculous. He's 12. He needs to go be a 12-year-old boy. He does not need to worry about whether he's going to play Baylor or UT. Like, that's so crazy. So yeah, something has to change, and I think that it comes from the people who are higher up. So that would be
So what do you
what I have
think
to say about that.
what do you think are the qualities of an ideal coach?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like there's a lot. So I think um, I think the best coach that I've ever had was my high school basketball coach, and I feel like he's a pretty. I mean, he was kind of crazy, as in like silly, um, but he was like one of those coaches that like changes your life. You know what I'm saying? And he would listen. Like, I had a house fire. My whole house didn't burn down, just like a little bit of it, and we were displaced for like 6 months or so. Um, and I like showed up to basketball practice like the next day. I like had to go home and my jersey was smoky, my shorts were smoky, like everything just smelled like smoke. And he was like, "You cannot come into basketball smelling like this. Like, we're going to get you new clothes." And so he like literally just went and got me like new shorts and like new socks and stuff like that. And just like a coach who literally just wants like what is best for you has to like, that is probably the ideal coach that I would say. Just want someone who will actually listen and not just say that they're going to listen, who like puts action behind their words, is definitely something that's like huge in a coach. Because I know in my recruiting process, the coach said a lot of things and none of it happened. And so it's just like empty words. And I think that's harmful to a student athlete who's like literally making one of the biggest college decisions of their life and then they get lied to. I'm like, that's ridiculous. Um, so yeah, having meaning behind your words, listening, and someone who's going to make you better. Like, don't put a ridiculous amount of pressure on, but like, I mean, be stern. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to coach them, but also don't be ridiculously harsh on the person. So they're human before they're an athlete. So
When you reflect on the choices that you've made over the past 2 years, we'll say, would
mhm.
you change anything?
um, I don't think that I would, because I think that I've learned a lot from like my college experience, especially. Um, I miss high school a lot, if I'm being completely honest. I know like no one says that, but I really do. But I think I learned a lot more from college athletics and college high school than I or college whoa, the college experience, not college high school. I don't even know what I'm saying. Than I ever would have just like if I would have not played college sports and just gone to like a bigger school. So yeah.
And then what is it about D3 that you think other people should know?
They don't scholarship you for athletics. That is one thing that isn't awesome about D3. Um, you're there because you want to play the sport, is what I've learned, which isn't always a bad thing, but like kind of makes you realize, man, I really am just playing this because I like had the opportunity to. And they're not like paying me to be here almost. But so that's kind of like a positive and a negative. I mean, it sucks that they don't pay for your college, but like it's good that you like actually want to be there. And then one thing that I would like that's really helpful is sorry, my dad just walked in.
I
Is she says hi. Um, one thing that was super helpful is like they really prioritize your academics. I feel like if you interview other D3 athletes, they'll probably say the same thing, because like that's D3's whole thing is like academics before athletics. And sometimes it feels like you're an athlete student instead of a student athlete, but in reality, you really they really do try to do a good job of prioritizing your schoolwork before your athletics. So Yeah.
Is there anything else that you feel like I missed about this interview? I know we have a 3-minute and 38-second countdown for this
Oh,
interview. Is there
yes.
anything else that you think that I missed talking about that you wanted to include?
I don't think so. I think that was kind of everything.
Okay, and then this interview will come out on January, February, March, April, May, June 22nd. So you
Awesome.
have almost a month.
Okay.
Between now and then, if anything changes, just send me a direct message, send me an email, and
Okay.
I'll add it to the script, positive or negative. If you
Okay.
decide to transfer,
Yeah.
just keep
Yeah.
me in the loop. And
Yeah, for
then if
sure.
you can send me a picture that I can use for social media, that would be great.
Yeah.
Um, Anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so. I think that's everything.
Awesome. Thank
Perfect.
you, and I'll talk to
Yes.
you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.